And sometimes things happen to us, not necessarily for the purpose of our demise. Sometimes they happen to give us a kick in the butt to trigger us to move in a different direction, to think differently, to explore new paths. And that was really the kick in the butt that I needed, perhaps.
Well, welcome to the Real Estate Money Matrix Podcast, where we talk all things real estate and entrepreneurship. My name is Scott Ulmer. I am your host today. And on this episode, we're going to be talking to Rachel Oliver, who, much like our company, Little Pink House of America, specializes in rent-to-own homes. We were having a little conversation beforehand. She is in Canada. We're in the States, and kind of cool how this transpired. Might have been a little serendipitous there, and she'll tell you that here in just a second. But let me just give a kind of a quick bio, if I may. So Rachel is the owner of Clover Properties, which is a family-run business that has been helping people get on the path to home ownership through their Rethink Renting rent-to-own program since 2009. Very excited to hear about that. Sounds really cool. Up in Ontario, Canada. And you have a book. You're an author, Rent to Own, Essential Guide for Home Buyers, The Key to a Fresh Start and a Richer Future. And that's available on Amazon. And I will ask you here for a plug where people can get that here before we are done with this. And my understanding, it's a guide for potential homeowners and buyers that might want to do a rent to own, lease to own type scenario, depending on life circumstance that may have occurred. And you also work with aspiring real estate investors. And so I'll want to ask about that as well. And so with that, let's hop in. Rachel, welcome. Thank you for being here. How are you today?
I'm fantastic. Thanks for having me, Scott.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you for being with us. So up in Canada, I've got to ask, because we're kind of getting October, the leaves are changing a little bit. How's the weather up in Ontario at this time of year?
I can't complain. You can see the leaves behind me are nice golden red. And I actually am just showing them off. I positioned my desk today specifically for that so that you guys can see the time of year. It's beautiful. Actually, we're having almost summer weather, and the window is so small for us to enjoy this kind of weather. So we feel very blessed.
Because it gets cold up there pretty quick, doesn't it?
Well, before you know it, we're going to be in snow pants and mittens and parkas. Oh yeah, it's coming, and it's only maybe 4 or 5 weeks away.
Oh boy, you better enjoy it before it gets here. So, well, Rachel, how did you get into real estate? That's kind of my first question. And then I want to ask more about Clover Properties, but how did you get your start?
I got my start by being dissatisfied. I was dissatisfied with my 9 to 5, and you never really work 9 to 5. I was in a management position, climbing that proverbial corporate ladder in a male-dominated industry, and it was never 9 to 5. I was working extensive hours, and then along came our first child, and just before she was born, I was diagnosed with cancer.
Wow.
And I said to my husband at that point that, I can't keep doing what I'm doing and having enough time to live my life. I have to find a different way to generate income, to replace my income, so I can be present for the baby that, we're bringing into this world, and maybe any other children. So it really shifted my priorities in terms of where I put my energy, where I put my time, where I put my focus. And it was all about the people in my life. It was all the people that I loved, and it wasn't so much about the job. So I kind of thought, all right, I still have to be practical. I still have to put food on the table, like any responsible mother. So I thought, okay, well, real estate seems to be the place where a lot of people make money. So how about I explore those options? And I'm sure you know Robert Kiyosaki. He introduced me to this notion when I read his book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And it kind of put the idea in my head, what if? So I attended actually a weekend seminar that he had put on to, one of those freebies, come for free, and then we'll upsell you so you can call your credit card company and make some room. It was one of those, but it was still very informative and very enlightening. Not that I'm plugging those types of conferences. For me, it was an eye opener, and I got out of it what I really wanted to get out of it. I really wanted to understand the landscape. What is the landscape? What are the opportunities? I always thought it was just you buy a home and you rent it out, and you have to then deal with tenants and toilets. And that didn't really sit well with me. So I wanted to know what else is out there. And that's really what opened up my eyes to really listen in at that seminar. And they talked about lease options. They're, of course, from the US. So they spoke the American version of this name, lease options. And they kind of explained what is lease options. And I thought, wow, that sounds like a win-win, a true win-win where I can invest with a purpose of helping someone else and helping myself. Plus, I discovered after crunching some numbers that it was a lucrative cash flowing scenario. That, okay, so it'll make it easier for me to cash flow without tenant and toilet hassles, which could potentially, if I do enough of these, replace my job income. And that's how it all started.
Very neat, and a life circumstance that kind of dictated. Obviously, want to talk about real estate and your company, but that getting a cancer diagnosis while you're pregnant, did I hear that correctly? Right, that had to have been. I have 3 young kids, and my oldest 15, youngest is 6, and I've got an 8-year-old as well. And Rachel, that had to have been devastating news, and I gotta just ask out of curiosity. So getting a piece of information like that, right, that was your first child. I mean, how did you process that? How did you get through that time?
Well, I have to give a lot of credit to my husband. He was my rock. He was my best friend. He really allowed me the opportunity to evaluate all of the realities that come with that type of a diagnosis. And we did a lot of research, and we evaluated what we can do and how we're going to beat it. The mindset was always that we got this. Although I was, in my mid 30s at the time, there weren't a lot of people I could talk to or connect to on that level to talk about it. So we had to go on the internet, and we had to do research and listen in on forums. Back then, forums were a thing with patients that were going through the same thing. And with his help, we realized that we have options, and all we have to do is focus on the outcome that we desire. And of course, we wanted everything to work out. And sometimes things happen to us, not necessarily for the purpose of our demise. Sometimes they happen to give us a kick in the butt to trigger us to move in a different direction, to think differently, to explore new paths. And that was really the kick in the butt that I needed, perhaps, to not be frightened to leave my full-time job and take a chance and take a risk, because now it had a different meaning. Now it had a different purpose. And also it made me a lot more interested in pursuing real estate from a point of view of not just helping myself, but also being of value and of service to others, because I understand what a setback can mean to a family. I understand the emotional impact. I understand the financial impact that comes with it, and how you have to kind of pick up the pieces and get on with things. And we really didn't have a huge support system when we were going through this experience. So I think it's made us also more compassionate towards what we do. And kind of all roads kind of led to this spot almost from that diagnosis. I know it's kind of weird to say. Of course, I am very thankful that everything worked out, and we went on to have another child, even though the doctors cautioned me never to get pregnant again. They started laying on all the statistics and saying, the statistics show blah, 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 blah. And I said, yeah, but statistics don't show what I know in my heart. Statistics can't navigate my own personal intuition. So it also taught me to trust more in myself. It taught me to trust more in my husband. And it taught me to be vulnerable and be okay with it. So lots of beautiful lessons. So that's probably the best way I can explain how I processed this setback.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, first of all, congrats on beating and 2 children later, and what a phenomenal story. And it's amazing in life how sometimes the biggest adversity has the biggest blessings, and some of the destiny changes. And what did I use the word setback? And one of my favorite phrases is it's a setback is just a setup for what's in store for you next. So, well, thank you for sharing that openly as well. I hope that catches a few people, and some really, really great takeaways there. And again, kudos to the life change. So, all right. So you quit your job and you decide to kind of hop in, and so I assume, is this in around 2009 when you guys got started?
we got started. We started researching in 2009, and I think on the tail end, we finally took the plunge. It felt like it was a slow moving ship, and I'm not one to like things going slowly. I had to take it slowly because my husband is very risk averse. He doesn't like change. He really liked the fact that we had, two corporate incomes, and he liked the fact that we had benefits with our employers,
Sure.
and we're paying into some sort of a retirement. Yeah, right. So he and I don't always see eye to eye. I'm more like, let's go, and he's like, wait a minute, let's think about this. So he really was he was really slow to get on board, and I actually felt like I have to do a lot of running around, doing research, talking to people, and bringing back ideas, and he kept like, well, what about this? And what if this happens? He was very much, kind of throwing darts at every idea. And then finally I said, you know what? I don't have all the answers. And this is going to take forever if I have to try to come up with all the answers. Why don't we find somebody that has been doing this and has been doing it well, and we can just learn from them, and that will allow us to springboard. And that's exactly what I did. Is I found a mentor who at the time, I think he said he had done about, I don't know, 25 rent to own deals. And that was intriguing for me because I had zero to my name. So I thought, okay, well, he's done at least 25 more than I have. So he must know a thing or two. And I literally cornered this guy at a networking event. And I said, you're going to teach me everything you know, right? And he's like, oh, okay, crazy lady. And and finally, somehow I kind of twisted his arm, and that's exactly what he did. He agreed to train us on his knowledge. He was an engineer by, in his profession, so he was very systemic, and he was very compartmentalized in how he did these transactions. So that was actually, again, very serendipitous. That it was easy for us to just follow his process and extract information that we could then learn from.
Very good. Very good. And so you knew that you want to do rent to own right from the beginning. And that was, you patterned your business after that, right from day one?
I'd say there was some resistance. But you know what made it easy is that our mentor said that he'll shadow us on our first deal, and he'll course correct us if we started going off the rails. And I didn't need that as much as my husband did. My husband is his name is Neil Oliver, so his initials are NO. So Mr. No.
That is funny. That is really funny.
Mr. No needed this extra hand-holding process. So once we got through our first kind of shadow deal, something interesting happened. Mr. No realized that, first of all, he's smarter than he knows. KNOW. And the other thing that happened is that we realized that what our mentor taught us is not necessarily how we want to operate our rent to own deals. We suddenly started seeing gaps, and like, oh, wow, this is a gap, that's a gap, that's a gap. And then we thought, okay, well, how are we going to fill in these gaps? We're smart, we can figure this out. And we filled in some gaps, and we started doing things differently. So the teacher taught us in many ways what to do, but also we learned what not to do.
Very good. You took the strategy, you took the blueprint, and you improved upon it. And then you did it the way you want to do it. And I used a phrase earlier in the conversation, win-win. And that's something that always connects with me because one of my mentors early on was a gentleman who fairly well known in our space, but always felt like a zero-sum game in deals, that you almost had to have a winner and a loser. And I never liked that. I mean, it's business, and yes, we're here to win and we want to make money. But I've always learned that let me say it differently. I've learned over time that having a win-win, going in with that attitude to see everybody leave feeling like they have a victory and feeling like they feel good about the deal. That made me feel really good. And that's something we really strive for. And I know you had said that earlier, and I'm sure that's the approach you take with your people.
And that was the real reason why we saw an opportunity to make some changes to how our mentor was doing things. We noticed very clearly there were certain areas that were putting those home buyers into a bit of a disadvantageous scenario. And our goal was always to do this so that we could sleep soundly at night, so that we could feel like we're empowering people to take control, and just giving them some guidance so that they can get over some setback and set themselves up for success. And that was our role, to set them up. Of course, they still have to do some heavy lifting, but what our mentor was doing in some cases was contradicting that. And that didn't align with our values, and that didn't align with our integrity. And that's where we thought, okay, this has to make sense. And if we do everything to set them up and they still don't succeed, at least our conscience is clear.
Sure. And reading between the lines, it sounds like maybe your mentor, if the buyers he was selling to didn't get a loan, that was okay, and he would go do it again. And in many cases, there's without going too deep, strategies, I guess, that correlate to that. And I get it, and I'm not a judgy guy, so if that's what is a good strategy for somebody, that's great. But sounds like you want to make sure that in every way possible, your buyers were set up for a successful transaction. And if they failed, it wasn't because it was a lack of effort on your part and putting the pieces in front of them. And they had to ultimately, they have to do their part. You can't do it all for them, but ultimately that allowed you to sleep good at night and have a good conscience.
Absolutely. And one of the things that really stood out for us when we started digging deeper about our assumptions about why this may or may not be a win-win, because remember, we're still newbies and we're still doubting everything we're doing. I think that's normal as you're learning something brand new. But we started talking to other people because now we knew what questions to ask. And also we knew what answers we were trying to listen for. So we asked other people that were doing rent to owns in our market. And we said, well, what's your success rate? And the answer was not favorable. A lot of people were saying probably below 50-50. So there's a 50% chance or lower that home buyer we're helping get through this rent-to-own journey will get their loan at the end. And I thought, that's a little bit uncomfortable. Some people told me it was 30% success rate. And we thought, you know what, we're really going to change the dynamics. We're really going to make it our mission. We're going to start with an intention to allow for more than 90% to be successful through this process. And we certainly achieved that. We've helped over 500 home buyers, and we have more than a 90% success rate as a result of making some smart decisions back in 2010.
Fantastic.
Well, 2010.
And being in kind of a similar space, I can tell you that's phenomenal. 90% success rate. It's when you're dealing with someone that may not qualify for a bank loan today, an institutional loan. Obviously, there are some reasons for that. Sometimes it's nothing to do with their ability to pay their bills, but other time it may be. And so to have a success rate that high is fantastic. Kudos to you guys for making those tweaks and really creating homeowners. That's fantastic. Well, fast forward to today. So you have obviously learned a lot. 500 plus under your belt is phenomenal. Give us a snapshot in time of your company today. How you guys doing? What's it look like? And tell me a little about this Rethink Renting program, if you may.
So Rethink Renting is really just to notify people that you don't have to be stuck renting to try to figure out how to improve your credit situation, how to build up a bigger down payment. Rethink that path and go on the rent to own path instead. A lot of people don't understand that rent to own is an option for them. And they know that they won't qualify with the bank. So they kind of sit in this limbo spot. So we're like, rethink your position, rethink what you're doing now, because there's a different path. And that's really what we're trying to give it. The word rent to own can be confusing. And to some people, it's deceiving because rent to owns can be done differently. Some people buy a property first and then they market that property to get home buyers to rent to own it. And that's a property first scenario. And I believe you guys in Jacksonville see a lot of that kind of activity, and in other parts of the US, that's a very common approach. And here in Canada, that is also one of the ways that it was being done. However, a lot of the people that we were talking to about success rates, what they had in common was that they were doing property first and then trying to put people into them. And then those people wouldn't necessarily stay in the game for the long term. And we thought, why don't we change it up a little bit and go with people first? So our approach was people first, We find the people, figure out how we can help them, and then they go house hunting with a realtor that can take them. And we have a broad network of realtors all over the region that we cover in Canada here. And those realtors do their job the way they normally would do and show properties. And then our role in this scenario is to essentially vet those properties. So our goal is to make sure that those properties will align with the affordability of the people. And if it does, then, and they're ready to go, then essentially we bring in a private investor that will then step in and work with the realtor to buy the property. So people first, property second is essentially the model that we operate with. And we're a very lean team. We're not realtors ourselves. We're not mortgage agents ourselves. We really are real estate investors. And we started off doing this for a handful of people, and we were able to qualify for a handful of mortgages. But then, of course, even we as investors hit a brick wall because the banks also say, okay, you're over leveraged, you're maxed out, you got to pause, don't take on any more mortgages for a little while. And we're like sitting there twiddling our thumb, but the phone is still ringing. Home buyers are saying, I need your program. I heard from so-and-so. I'm trying to get into home ownership. I can't get a mortgage. What can you do for me? And we're like, well, we're maxed out. We can't take on any mortgages. So we're like, Mom, Dad, can you go on the next mortgage? And then sisters, uncles, brothers, you name it. We started tapping our friends and family to start coming in as investors to buy these properties that these home buyers would then rent to own from them. But one thing they all had in common was concerns about, well, how do I put a deal like this together? I don't know the mechanics. I don't know the contracts. And they said, we'll just pay you guys. You guys consult us on how to put all of this together, and we'll just take on the mortgage, and that's it. So before we knew it, we were offering a viable service to not just the home buyers, but also investors, prospective investors that otherwise would have never done any kind of real estate investing because they were of a similar mindset that I had, a limiting belief, if you will, that to be a real estate investor, you have to, know how to deal with contractors, and you have to like dealing with tenants and toilet troubles, and you're destined for all of that for all eternity. But in reality, this form of real estate investing is a lot more user friendly or novice friendly, because in this scenario, our company, essentially our role is to prepare both sides for success. So we screen the home buyer, we vet the property, we negotiate the numbers, we put all the contracts together, and then we prepare the investor side to make sure that they can qualify for a mortgage at the price that home buyer is shopping in, and we prep them on all the contracts, and of course, basically negotiate the terms for both sides without the both sides ever having to meet. We do all the heavy lifting behind the scenes, and it's basically a turnkey service for the investor side, so they can go about their busy life. They don't have to worry about anything other than qualifying for a mortgage and signing some paperwork. And then when the rent to own actually kicks in, so the home buyers move in, the rent to own is in swing. That investor takes more of a passive role, and our company's job is to keep that home buyer on track. So we're checking in with them. We're the primary point of contact to make sure that they're paying on time, which is critical to their success, that they're contributing to their down payment credits and accumulating them as planned. We're making sure that they're doing what they need to maintain the property, because as you know, with the rent-to-own process, the home buyers are really, at least with our program, the home buyers are responsible for all facets of maintenance and repairs, the same way as they would be with a mortgage. So we're checking in on them to make sure that they know what to do and how to handle issues that come up. And of course, then the other component of keeping them accountable is checking in to make sure that they're doing what they need to do to hit their milestones in terms of credit repair and mortgage readiness. So we're doing all of this on behalf of the investors that are holding title and basically just enjoying a passive cash flow check every month. And then before you know it, 3 years comes around, and the home buyers are able to exercise their option to purchase, and the investor exits the deal.
Fantastic. So you actually have a few demographics in there that may have value in what we're talking about today. Folks that may have the desire to get into real estate or be an investor, but may not want to be hands-on, more hands-off. Certainly private lenders that either can qualify or may just have cash that they're looking to place. And what a great home to put it with you and obviously with your program. And of course you have buyers and sellers in there, I guess, to some degree. Do you buy most of the houses through agents, or do you guys do any sort of direct to seller marketing?
That's a great question. We personally prefer working with agents. I feel there's a lot of value that agents bring to the table to protect all the parties involved. And there's just an incredible amount of knowledge that agents have that I just don't have the time to wrap my head around. And I value that. And I would rather pay for the expertise to be at that table than to do private deals.
I hear you there. I hear you there. So a couple other questions here, and then we'll wrap up. Just a quick snapshot on the market up there. Down here in America, sounds funny saying that, but down here in the States, it's a smoking hot market. Of course, the whole world has experienced COVID, and what a setback that's been for many, and a setup for a lot of others as well. But it certainly was the opposite, I think, of what everybody thought was going to happen in the market here. COVID hits, and boy, there's all these buzz phrases: foreclosure tsunamis, and this, that, and the other, and the sky is falling. And of course, in our world, that's not always a bad thing, because that's when opportunities for good deals can present themselves. But it was the opposite. All of a sudden, COVID is kind of in full gear, and prices are through the roof, and supply and demand is off. It's an imbalanced market, and you've got values that are just crazy, 15-20% year over year. And so things are starting to slow here a little bit, maybe not fast enough the way we'd like it. But how is the market up in Canada? What a quick snapshot in time. How's it looking up there, and how are things?
Well, Scott, I completely agree with you. We were bracing ourselves for doom and gloom when COVID hit, and we thought, that's it. We're in the wrong industry. What do we do? What's plan B? And the phone kept ringing. So what we were delighted about is the people that were in our program. At the time, we had about 70 or 80 home buyers going through the program, and their tenacity and commitment to the process was incredible. Whereas a lot of my colleagues and friends were who have rental properties were basically, frustrated and dying to offload their rental properties because so many tenants were behind on rent. And whereas our rent owners were keeping pace for the most part. So that was one beautiful surprise, that everyone was much more motivated in the program. But on the flip side, the phone kept ringing from home buyers that wanted to get into homeownership, because if anything that instability and uncertainty did, I think it created more desire to create stability through home ownership. Which I didn't anticipate. And of course, that's not just within the context of rent own. I think that's, you guys are experiencing that as much as we are, nationally and locally. So our market started to see very little inventory, especially in the entry-level price point. Mm-hmm. So for us, our entry-level price point is substantially higher than many parts of the US. The market we're in, entry-level price point is anywhere from 400,000 to 600,000.
Wow. Yeah, that's a lot higher.
Believe it or not, it's a lot higher. It's much higher. And yet the demand is huge and the supply is limited. Mm-hmm. So limited that people are paying 60, 70, 80, 100,000 over asking. So when you're dealing with a $600,000 price tag and then you're paying $100,000 over asking, that's crazy. And that was setting the new standard. And the comps, of course, are then blown out of proportion, because then you're looking at comps that are just inflated and irrationally so. So it's created a lot of confusion, of course, because, what is fair market value? Is fair market value the lowball price, the actual price, the price that got accepted? And we're still continuing to see that in our market. There's just not enough. I mean, Canada is a big country and we have a lot of land to build on. And one of the challenges we're seeing is that there's just the building of new development is not happening quickly enough. And then on the other side, we have all of these new immigrants coming into our country, because COVID hasn't stopped our country from allowing more immigration. And the immigration, believe it or not, 50% of it settles in the region where we operate our business. And then we have, on top of that, the pent-up demand for real estate with the people that are here on the ground. So all of these things are continuing to perpetuate the problem of not enough supply.
Yeah. How it makes it hard to find good deals.
Absolutely. We're definitely seeing deal flow slowing down as a result, whereas before we could just pop out, 2, 3 deals a week. We're seeing that it's taking our home buyers that have been screened and approved their house hunting, and that house hunting phase is dragging on a lot longer. And then we finally find a property that makes sense in their price point. We go in to make an offer, and there's about 7 or 8 other offers. And of course, the offers are still over asking. And, we certainly have to make it as clean as possible. But then we have the other aspect is that we have a mandatory policy of always having a home inspection. We always want to make sure that the property is inspected to ensure that it's not a money pit. It's not going to be a win-win if it's a money pit for the rent owners and for the investor. And even getting an offer accepted with that condition has been extremely challenging. So we have to get a little creative, but we're making it work.
Yeah. And even if you have to get into some sort of bidding war, that could skew the income ratio of the buyer, could skew the pre-approval, I guess, to whatever degree. So yeah, it's so if there's a little market correction, it probably wouldn't hurt your feelings too bad.
Absolutely not. We're overdue for one. and that's part of the reason why we're like, okay, well, while our market is catching up and waiting for its market correction, what else can we be looking at? What else can we be considering?
Yeah, it's we're experiencing the same down here. So well, I really enjoyed this, and I want to thank you again for your time. I'd like to give you the floor just for a minute or two. Any message that you want to convey to our listeners, to your potential listeners, and I think most importantly is how do people find you if they are interested in investing with your company? If they're a potential buyer, maybe a potential seller, how do people find you? And I would give you the floor for take us home.
Oh, well, thank you very much. So for anyone who is aspiring to get involved in real estate investing and is not sure where to get started, rent-to-owns are an excellent vehicle. And as long as you're working with a company or a team that knows what they're doing, whether it's a mentor or a real estate agent or a company like ours, ride their coattails. And you will not be disappointed. They will take you somewhere further, faster, and with fewer bumps in the road. So don't delay. Get out there and figure out how you want to approach this. Do you want to do this yourself? How does your day look like if you're going to do it by yourself? And if you don't have to do it, time to do it by yourself, then that's where leveraging the time and expertise of others is going to really pay off. You won't regret that. And then, as far as buyers go, I just want buyers to know that even if they are trying to upsize, downsize, and the banks are holding them back, you're not sentenced to the limited options that you might be aware of. Expand your horizons, talk to real estate professionals in your market, and just ask about what rent to own is. And sellers as well, sometimes it might be more lucrative, or sometimes it might be more rewarding to sell to somebody who is going to rent to own. There's so many different creative ways to leverage this strategy that will allow for a win-win, whether you're an aspiring investor, whether you're a buyer who wants to get into home ownership, or you're a seller who wants to maximize your profitability and do it with maybe more profits than you anticipated if you just do a straight sale. You can always learn the basics of what rent to own is through our book. Scott, you mentioned it. It's called the Rent to Own Essential Guide for Home Buyers. It's available on Amazon.com. Just search it up and grab yourself a copy, in either a soft copy or a hard copy. And if you're interested in an autographed copy, you can email me at rachel@hellocashflow.ca.
Love it. Love it. Love it. And that's the best way to get a hold of you is that email.
Rachel@hellocashflow.ca.
Love it. Love it. Well, you are fantastically spoken. Great stuff. Love what you guys are doing. There's actually some really neat little twists that is distinctly different than I'm familiar with. And kudos on your success. Kudos on, I know it's been several years, but the cancer victory there, that's a huge deal. And certainly want to thank you for your time. So again, Rachel Oliver, Clover Properties, Ontario, Canada. If there's potential investors, potential home buyers of interest, you reach out to her. She just gave the email address. And I want to thank you again for your time. It's really been a pleasure. And so guys, listeners, thank you for joining us. This is another episode of the Real Estate Money Matrix Podcast. My name's Scott Ulmer, Little Pink Houses of America. Always a pleasure. Rachel Oliver, Clover Properties, Ontario, Canada. Thank you for being my guest, and I hope that our paths get to cross again soon.
Likewise. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you so much.